Grave Tone.
Welcome to Grave Tone Podcast, where horror comes to life in every form it takes. I'm Megan.
I'm Arthur.
And we have an interview coming your way today. So we are going to be starting tomorrow, dear God, covering a whole bunch of Fantasia Festival films. We're so excited. I'm so happy that we're going to be doing this. It's going to be crazy. We're going to be tired, and it's going to be a lot of fun. But before we kick all of that off, we have an interview coming your way.
Yes, we do. We have an interview with a very cool horror author who has a book releasing literally today. When you are listening to this episode. If you're listening to this on the day of the drop, thank you very much.
July 15th.
Yeah. He has a book coming out this week. It is a horror book, obviously. Mm-hmm. It is weird. It is grotesque. It is a bunch of short stories and novellas all combined together. You can basically read it from the middle, from the end, from the beginning. And he has a lot of things and very cool things to say about the process, the writing, and some of the stories.
So hopefully everybody just enjoy this in the meantime.
Yeah. I do want to welcome everyone to another interview with a really cool horror author. We have Alex Grass today. Welcome.
I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you very much for hopping on with us.
Thank you much for joining us. Yeah. Can you, before we begin and dive into the whole thing, because you have some really cool stories and books in general that you have for us today, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of like the book and the short stories that you're working on right now or promoting right now?
Sure. So I've been writing and I guess occupying most of my time writing for about 7 years now.
Nice.
I trace it back to like sort of a watershed moment in my life where I went to rehab for 3 years.
Okay.
And then when I got out, I found myself incapable of finishing law school, which is what I had been doing at the time. And I just started reading and writing a lot of horror. And there was something in it that I think helped to express the yearning part of a human being that can't be expressed through words. Mm-hmm. And I found myself pouring, spirit and ideas into this outlet. And in turn, some stories would be told. And I find that the short stories, especially in Infernal Tramps, are sort of the culmination of that. Because, if you read the other books they're all horror novels. And they're all very different from each other.
Yeah.
I guess it's consistent in that way that, like all the short stories in Infernal Tramps are very different from each other and all the novels are very different from each other. But what you're reading, especially in the longer work, is like someone who's still really working his shit out,
Okay.
And what you read in the short stories is a guy who has come to terms with his level of derangement and come to terms with, more or less his place on this earth and decided that it's a fine thing to make a go of spooking the hell out of people and freaking them out and maybe even grossing them out a little bit.
Awesome. Well,
Nice.
Can you, I guess, in that same sort of vein, obviously your personal experiences have lent themselves quite a bit to your writing and the types of stories that you work on. But outside of that, did you have any sort of gateways into the horror genre, like when you were young, for instance, whether it was through literature, film, I don't know, games, music, like anything in particular that kind of got you started on the genre?
Yes. From my mother, accidentally, and I'll elaborate in a second, and then through my father, because he was a reprobate and a little bit of a delinquent and a negligent parent, and I've come to appreciate that. He would take me to see movies with him because, he didn't really, in his way, he knew how to handle kids, but like not really. So we'd go to like R movies, I think one time he tried to take me to an NC-17 movie and they just like wouldn't let me in. They're like, no, sir. It's like, you cannot bring someone in, he's not even tall enough to ride the roller coaster, sir. And Um, so like I remember, I have very vivid memories of going to see Terminator 2 with my father when I was 6 years old.
Great
Okay.
movie.
Yeah, and that pretty much informed my stance on AI ever since. Um, but my mother would, I always loved reading, and my mother would buy me books. But the way that she would do it, because like she doesn't know what a young boy likes to read. I mean, she can guess, and she liked to go the extra mile. So she thought that maybe based on the appearance of cool books, that would be something I was interested in.
Mhm.
Well, if you know anything about the way that pulp publishers clothed their books, it's that they made something scintillating, and what was inside was absolutely horrifying.
Mhm.
And so my mom very unwittingly bought me a lot of really elaborately graphically designed books that inside had very, very, very adult themes. Like I remember
Ah,
one time she accidentally bought me, she had no idea what it was. She bought me a book about the Holocaust. She had no clue.
Wow.
oh
Yeah.
boy.
Yeah. And then I remember like she got me like the leather bound. She had no idea what it was. The Sandman graphic novel. And
Okay.
I
Yeah.
and I was like younger than 10. And there's like all kinds of weird death and sexuality in there, and
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
just like really, that not kosher,
Yeah.
basically. Um, and I was also a latchkey kid, so I watched like if there was basically on Saturday nights there were spooky movies, on HBO,
Yeah.
and I watched like what was on. I think
Mhm.
I think we're probably all of that same generation where like that was television. You watched what was on.
That's it.
We
Exactly.
were probably
Yeah,
the last generation
Yeah, that's it.
that did
but
that
yeah,
Now
really.
you just
So
ask, oh, I want to watch this, and you get
correct.
it.
Yep.
That's too accessible now, man.
It's very different.
yeah, yeah. I know. It was like such an experience to go in, and I'm not like a golden ageist. I'm not saying one generation's better than the other,
Right.
but it was
Yeah.
it was a unique experience to go into school and like just say to somebody, "It's like, so what'd you think?" And like you'd all seen the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's so true.
It
What was
is true.
that kind of like? What was that movie that you think made the biggest impact on you in terms of getting into the genre of horror? Because like we have on the podcast a series called Childhood Trauma,
Mhm.
which we actually explore that part of like movies that got us into it and traumatized us, and then we revisit them again X amount of years later and kind of like relook at it. And if it's still the same, is it scary? A little bit of self healing and self
Therapy without
therapy.
going to
Yeah,
therapy.
that's it. Did you
Yeah,
have like a movie like that that did it for you?
probably The Fly,
Oh
Cronenberg's The.
Ooh,
goodness,
Yeah,
yes.
that would do it, I
Yeah.
imagine.
yeah. And I've always like not only the the body horror and the transformation, and the irony of being of scientific means, which are supposed to basically move man toward enlightenment, being the
Right.
thing that causes him to revert to a beast-like state.
Mhm.
And it's like the ultimate. If you play with fire, you're going to get burned. And
Yes.
I remember like the body horror was very impactful, but it was like I think it was the descent into madness or the transformation into the beast,
Hmm.
that really hooked me. And also, I have a thing about like the tragic mutant, more or less.
Mhm.
Okay.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I love the Hunchback of Notre Dame. I love. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie 300, and this will
Yes.
let everybody know I know nothing about Greek mythology, but just but if this is my reference point, but like there's like the
Oh,
deformed.
Yes.
yes.
The
Do you
guy.
Yes.
remember?
Yes.
Yes,
And
yes,
Yes.
yes, yes,
Yes.
yes.
he can't lift his shield.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The deformed guy who wants to be a Spartan warrior, he can't lift his shield.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think like I've always, I don't know, like probably I see a little of myself in those guys. And probably it resonates with my sense of, like that if the world was just, it would probably be just in a very dark way, yeah. I mean, The Fly. That's the answer.
Okay. Well, that's a beautiful sort of way of, I guess, like, like a beautiful sort of culmination of this, and the idea of the grotesque, obviously character, but being viewed through a different sort of lens in a way, from the viewer's perspective versus like the perspective of characters in certain stories and things like that. Is that because that's something that you've received, like reviews of and things like that with your work that have sort of indicated the interesting difference between the type of prose and the style in which you write your stories, with like the really horrifying content of the stories themselves? So do you feel like that's something maybe that has like informed your writing to a degree over time, is writing about the grotesque but in a very sort of beautiful way?
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever formulated that exact thought or put it in so many words, but I'd like to hire you on behalf of my id.
Well, it's always something I gravitate towards, because I feel that there are creatives who do have a tendency to kind of work within that style. Like Guillermo del Toro is somebody who always comes to mind with regards to that sort of very. A lot of the creatures and things in his stories are very grotesque, and the violence is quite extreme, but we kind of forget about it to a degree while we're watching one of his films, because he has this just absolutely beautiful way of portraying characters, these tragic characters, and like, filming different types of scenes and things like that, where everything is just sort of very hauntingly beautiful in spite of the really disturbing content of the story in many cases.
Yeah, I think that when horror is done right, it encompasses, that sort of like that paradoxical, double-edged sword, where on the one hand you have, a very fluid and sort of like wistful beauty, and on the other hand you have a brutality, and you have all the gristle of violence and disease. And I think, listen, life is like that. That's how life is. If you're standing around someone you love, and I've done this a handful of times, people get older and they're about to die, and like, dying is not pretty. It's not. But you're also, you don't remember the bad times, even as this terrible physiological process is taking place. You remember the good times. And oftentimes the things that are considered, by some sensibilities aesthetically beautiful, are they pair with something that's morally repugnant. Like if you think of like plastic surgery, like basically the societal influence of, let's call it, like the silicone industrial complex, that, like trying to convince women, because they get older, that like they're no longer human beings. It's that's sick. That's like, that's something that, it's the inversion, instead of like seeing the beauty in the grotesque, like creating the grotesque by aspiring towards beauty, because it's a false beauty. It's not real. It's like a supernormal stimulus.
Yeah.
Oh, don't even get me started about people talking about women's value diminishing with age. We will be here for a very long
It sounds like you've watched The Substance. Am I right?
I love The Substance.
It's great.
But like, honestly, I grew up very, I don't label myself anything. So like, I'm not gonna call myself a feminist. And I also think like doing that is like sort of a way to just indicate to people that, like your moral superiority. And but I grew up with a lot of very strong women in my life. Very strong women. My mother was a prosecutor. Her sister, before she raised her kids, she was a city judge.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, like, there was not, in some families, there's like, because there's a history of, the women being homemakers, there's sort of like this illusion that maybe there's, more inherent difference than there is. But like, I saw ladies rocking the shit, I did. And, if you want to know the epitome of that old saying, doesn't suffer fools, that was my father's mom. She did not suffer fools. She was also kind of rude, but it would be funny, like I remember we were at a restaurant, where she lived in Harrisburg, and she was sort of like a little bit of a big mucky muck in Harrisburg, and someone came up to her and they're like, Lois, it's so lovely to see you. It's like, I hope you have a great day. And the woman wasn't 3 feet away when my grandmother said, I have no idea who that is.
Oh, man.
Well, listen, I can appreciate somebody who speaks their mind. And I feel like, on occasion, women in particular could stand to do that a little bit more than we do very often.
Yeah. My wife talks about that all the time, because she's in residency as a doctor, and the nurses treat the male residents completely different.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Interesting.
All right.
Interesting to see how that happens.
Okay. I mean, look, that is interesting. I am not sure how to just segue into a good question out of this. So I'm going to ask you something a little bit different. Correct me if I'm wrong, but from the stories that you write, they usually start with something a little bit mundane, and then it kind of twists, right? Yeah. I've read the Stephen King memoir a while back, and he said that is kind of like the better way, or that's how he tries to structure his stories, because it's much easier to relate to something or someone who's just like, a person that something crazy supernatural happens. Is this what you're also trying to go with in order to be able to better kind of like relate with the person to the story that you're actually writing? You know what I mean?
I'm not sure if there's that kind of intent there. I'm not saying, listen, not an intent I'm aware of, right? Like the human brain's a funny little machine. So like, who knows, how the gears are turning. I think that, like, it's a very difficult question to answer, because I would really have to think about, like, why did things start? Because, one story starts with like a guy's trying to get pests out of his garden. Another one starts, with a guy living sort of like a humdrum alcoholic existence out of doors. And, another one just starts with like someone gets a carton of eggs,
That's it.
Right, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's it. Just, I'm really not sure. I think that it's not necessarily that they're, mundane settings, but it's that terrible things wait inside of mundanity. Power is wielded dumbly as it is wielded cruelly, in places like bureaucracies, in overzealous ideologies. It transforms, otherwise decent people into, slave masters. And that could be in anything. I've seen it. I remember it. Yeah. I have a son who's, he's neurodivergent, and he doesn't speak. And I've seen like teachers who are like, they could not regulate themselves in the way they needed to regulate themselves to be around a kid like that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Nothing traumatic, but just like really, what do the kids call it? Out of pocket. Really out of pocket.
Yeah. Okay. And would you say, like, do you try, when you start from those kind of mundane things that you mentioned, do you try to make it into something twisted on purpose, or does it just kind of like come around? You know what I mean? Because like I've heard a lot of writers, they're like, I just write and then I don't necessarily plan ahead. Of course, the overarching kind of story you kind of do, but in terms of what happens next, sometimes it's just something that pops in my head and I put it down on paper. You know what I mean? Or is it something similar for you, or do you have like a plan set up and you just follow it?
With I think like 2 of the novels, I planned it out, but with short stories, there's just like so much flex in the joints.
That's it.
By the nature of it, it's not like, I don't know, at least for me, how fruitful planning would be,
Right. Yeah.
Like, I don't even know what that would look like, like I'd have like bullet points like 1, eggs, 2, eggs with spider legs, 3, ominous note from dairy farmer, and it's just like, at that point, I might as well just write the story already.
That's it.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's true.
That's a great little way to start, is just whatever you happen to like, whatever kind of comes to you through the process gets bullet pointed, and then you're like, now how did I get here?
Yeah. That actually reminds me, like, when I was, I used to be like a drunk. It's fine. I'm fine talking about it. It was like, it's sort of like a painfully embarrassing time, but you get used to, the past being a part of you. But I used to carry around a notebook with me and a pen, and I would write notes, whether it was about like stuff in law school, or like, if I was going to write something. And I just remember, like thinking as I was writing it down, while I had a load on, like, wow, this is so brilliant. This is amazing. And then I would like wake up the next day and I'd look in the notebook, and it would say something like, "What if cheese pocket?" And I'm like, what is that? What brilliance was there that I saw? Because I remember thinking this was brilliant. What is cheese pocket? So, soda cans equals hypocrisy. Like, it's just not,
No, you got to dig back and be like, oh,
what is cheese pocket indeed? What is that?
Yeah, I just like, I don't know.
Did any of those kind of like weird markings that you wrote down translate into something afterwards that you were like, okay, there's an idea
like a
here.
fleshed
You know
out
what I mean? Yeah. Did you flesh it out? Some of them?
Never.
No, okay.
To be honest, never, not once.
Okay.
I just like, you might as well just like pick out 2 words from the dictionary and try and start a story that way.
Fair enough.
I mean, listen, your upcoming, about to be released collection of short stories is subtitled Tales of Weird Terror. So maybe to a degree, some of the ideas kind of stuck in there. But I guess if that's the case, it's Infernal Tramps, Tales of Weird Terror. So I guess my question for you would be, what does weird mean to you? And then as an addition to that, what for you is sort of the difference or the line, I guess, that you cross between genuinely just weird and then kind of like something disgusting or gross just for the sake of it that doesn't necessarily have a message?
Oh, wow. That's a really good, very tough question. Weird. How does one define weird? I think, in the way that you sort of like learn words you don't know through context clues, I think that, that's how you spot weirdness. I associate weirdness with, there's a man I used to see who would rollerblade in women's lingerie on the Upper East Side.
Okay.
All right.
There was another one who would wear a sheer robe and walk, not quite an ocelot, but something like an ocelot through the streets of Bushwick, Brooklyn. Now, I guess the line is like when you take that sort of like benign deviancy and it transgresses into something that's causes pain to somebody else, So, imagine someone who's like, maybe owns something a little bit bigger than an ocelot, and not only wants to be draped in something that's basically see-through, but wants to be naked. So like a naked man with a tiger all of a sudden is like violent insanity. It's
right.
It's it's weird, but it's not the first thing that people would. That's not the description that would come to mind for most people.
Yeah.
Like if you saw a guy, if you see the first guy, you see the person in the silk robe with the exotic cat. You're like, oh, that's weird. That's kooky.
He's a very, very eccentric man.
And
Yeah, exactly.
very non-threatening.
That's it. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, what a wonderful whack job. And you see the other guy and you're like, this guy is insane.
Yeah.
And the kids have to get inside now.
Yeah. It's not, it's the difference between walk by and kind of smile sort of, in a confused way versus cross the street.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's like, or it's that, or it's the difference between like someone who really enjoys Elvis, maybe to like a sort of eccentric degree, and has like a collection of like Elvis Hummels and like Elvis bottle caps and like Elvis stuffed animals.
Yeah.
It's the difference between that and then a man who dresses like Elvis every day alone in his house.
Right. Okay.
That is,
That's a great distinction.
Yeah. One you would probably invite to the barbecue, the other you would not.
Yeah.
No.
One of them just kind of sounds like your uncle who just likes to talk about their Elvis memorabilia.
Just Elvis.
It's harmless.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like one is like literally every man old enough to collect Social Security. I have a basement of trains. I'm retired. If I want to play with trains, that's my prerogative. Leave me alone.
True enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other guy's probably more like Buffalo Bill. Like it's like I dress like Elvis Presley, but I like to pretend that I'm, Lisa Marie.
Yeah.
I like that. It's like that, there's a story there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, there's something there. Write it down.
Yeah. Oh man. You know what? Speaking of writing, and again, this is from kind of like the information that I tried to gather. You don't write daily. Is that right?
I try, but I'm no.
Okay.
Usually it looks something like this. 300 words a day off, 3,000 words, 1,000 words a day off, 200 words a day off, 1,000 words, 1,000 words, reset, something like that. So probably, but regularly.
Yeah.
Regularly.
Yeah.
But, I take days off and it's really, there's no like method to it. It's mostly because I get distracted on Photoshop or like recently, like the book's coming out. So
of course.
I'm emailing a lot and like, I am grateful for, the people who read my book. So like when someone sends me an email, I respond to them,
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe like one day, from my lips to God's ears, I should be so successful that I'll have a problem balancing emailing fans,
Yeah.
But I like it. I like the human connection of it.
Mm-hmm.
I do.
100%. I mean, that is definitely better than not replying,
Oh God, yeah.
It kind of shows that want to connect with fans and everything. But since you're doing sprints, essentially, from what I understand, is this something that like works for you? Do you like it, or is it something that this is something you would like to like improve or get better at, quote unquote? Yeah.
I'm not trying to change anything.
Okay. All right. So it works.
I'm not trying. I've done. It's not necessarily a matter of like why change it. Is there a word like probably I would be, even more psychologically well if I managed to have a routine that looked similar from day to day. But I put all my huge effort into making the monumental change of not drinking you know, and of, you know, trying to cut out some of the pathologies that are inherited down my family line, you know, like, you know, to terrible anger and just generally the ceaseless dissipation of the death drive and self-destructive tendencies. You know, that takes a lot of bandwidth, and I'm not gonna spread it out so I could get an extra 300 words.
That's fair. Yeah.
Very valid. On the literary sort of side of things, do you have any major favorites or influences for you, or anything? So I know we talked about films a little bit, but more kind of like switching gears onto the literary side of things.
Oh, yes. Yes. There's some who are like, there's some who I love, even though my writing's nothing like theirs, but I just like, there's this guy named Reggie Oliver, and he writes short stories, and they're sort of like, I don't know. They have like an M.R. James sort of that like English academic feel to them, you know, English academic exploring the occult.
Okay.
Yeah. But he's just like, he has this, these stories are fantastic. He has one story, it's called the Mortlake Manuscript, and it's basically like tracing this occult lineage of a manuscript, right? That's the name of it. From like John Dee to Aleister Crowley, and in it is the secret history of the mythic figure, the Wandering Jew, right? And I thought that was so super cool. It was so super cool, and like, you know, a lot of people, especially like people that, you know, come from a similar background to me, they probably wouldn't like that, because typically the Wandering Jew is like, it's sort of seen as vaguely, but still an anti-Semitic trope. And I just thought he told sort of like a beautiful cautionary tale. And that is nothing like, you know, Clive Barker's Rawhead Rex, right?
Right.
I like both of those, right? But I love Reggie Oliver, but I'm a lot more like Rawhead Rex, you know? Maybe I'm, you know, a little more persnickety about prose than Clive Barker, although Barker's fantastic with prose.
Yeah.
Yeah, Reggie Oliver. And then like, I read, I think, almost all of Bentley Little's novels. They're just so great. They're like, it's just, and they all have this meta element to them, you know? Everyone's called either the bank, the store, the town, university, the ignored. And it's literally, maybe, you know, that could be it. That could be because he takes the mundane,
right,
and turns it into something terrifying. You know, he writes. People are always saying, because, you know, they don't necessarily know his work, you know, I want to see a horror story about an HOA. He wrote it, and it is appalling. You know, it's appalling. But he's great. And then like right now, you know, not just in horror fiction, but in film, and I think in media generally, there's just like, it's out there waiting for you to find it. There's so much great stuff, you know, and it comes to mind, you know, Valancourt Books. They put out like sort of lesser known foreign horror writers, and there's this guy named Attila Veres from Hungary, and he is just writing like this whacked out stuff, you know, and it's you know, it has that hallucinatory quality to it, where like these friends are visiting a vineyard, and the vineyard is like, they don't serve quite wine, but they serve like something that's like, it's experiential. You're feeling the deepest, most penetrating emotion, and you're calling as sharply as you can, you know, very poignant memories. But it's also like almost damaging. And you know, I don't know that guy would have been. I don't see that being publishable 40 years ago because of the difficulties of translation. But like now, if you need a translator, you know, you can go onto like Fiverr or, you know, Reddit or whatever, right? And like, listen, I have an endless list. You want a list? Any of your listeners want a list? I got a list.
I think people always like recommendations for new things to discover. Honestly.
Or especially like underrated or a little
100%.
bit unknown and stuff. That's why a lot of indie movies exist and shorts and, you know, indie writers, whatever it is, that just put out a bunch of stuff that is great.
Yeah.
But it just needs to be discovered. Like
Absolutely.
you said, it's out there, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. The problem is, you know, the problem is also the great thing about the time we live in. It's that there are no gatekeepers. But what that means is that the barbarians have to regulate themselves, right? So, you know, there is a lot of like just unreadable dross out there. But for that, there's also, I read 2 independent books and they blew my mind. And I know they would not have been published 20, 30 years ago. One's called The Butcher of Nazareth by David Scott Hay. And it's about this man who starts to have visions. And this is in sort of like the intermediate era of Jesus's life between childhood and him becoming, you know, like the Messiah.
Okay.
And he has a vision that he has to kill Jesus, you know? And and I expected it to be like incredibly anti-Christian, and it was not, you know? It was more like a, I don't know, it kind of had a Once Upon a Time in Hollywood feel, like Tarantino, you know, like what, you know, like what if Sharon Tate wasn't murdered, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Except in this one, Sharon Tate is Jesus. And, and actually it's leaning the other direction because they're trying to kill Sharon Tate. So maybe that's totally wrong.
That's a very interesting take on that.
Yeah.
I mean, but you know, like you said, it's not something that would have been published, and now it can be, and people can discover it, and it just sounds like a great premise. So
yeah, that's it. It's very different.
Yeah.
I mean, look at like No Sleep on Reddit, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Explosive cultural phenomenon, you know? And, you know, comes from the cesspool of incels in their mother's basements, you know? but there's brilliant stuff on there.
100%.
There's brilliant stuff. I mean, you know, Backrooms was basically taken from creepypasta essentially, and a photo that appeared on 4chan, you know?
And then spawned this
and
entire
it's
phenomenon.
Huge now. Now they're adapting a bunch of those kind of creepypasta stories or no sleep stories into movies and stuff. So you never know, right? What's going to happen.
I love Backrooms. I remember watching those videos and like, I don't know. I never fanboyed those videos, but like actually, I think my daughter introduced them to me.
Nice.
Yeah. I have my oldest is 20, and I think she showed it to me, and I'm just like, this is so twisted, and it's all in like basically like it looks like in an abandoned office, you know. Or like an abandoned windowless office. I'm like, oh man, this would be hell, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
I would prefer roasting in flames to this.
I think for anybody who's ever worked in like an office or very corporate environment and things like that, particularly in spaces like this that are outdated and maybe don't have many windows and things like that, can probably relate to just like the absolute horror that comes from a circumstance like that.
I believe it. Because I think that like fluorescent lighting is one of the most sinister inventions that has ever come up with, you know?
It doesn't help. No. It just hurts your eyes eventually.
Oh, it's awful.
Especially when it flickers.
Chronic headaches, everything.
Yeah, exactly. Like to me, I look at a fluorescent light, especially as you said, one that's flickering, and I think we're getting close to the end of the universe. That's what I think when I see fluorescent lights. Whether or not that's correct, I don't know, but that's what I think.
Oh man, it is a great movie though. It opens so much possibility.
Oh yeah.
to really anything, because it's just that kind of like blank canvas space, right?
Yeah.
For
You know,
anything to happen.
but that's kind of that's the advantage of working with stuff that's like sort of, doesn't pop on its own, like something that's sort of like boring, like an office space. It's that when you do see the strange thing or the horrifying thing, it really, really stands out.
Yeah.
It really stands out. It's like the difference between, like, imagine you're at a heavy metal concert and, everybody, is pierced through every angle and every fold of their body and is tattooed all over. Everyone has black hair and they're all sweaty and they're covered in metal spikes. At least this is the way it was when I went to metal concerts as a kid. And like, okay, like there it's normal and it's fun. And you know what? Sometimes, depending on the band, it's even a little wholesome, like there's a sense of community there. Now imagine that you're at a children's birthday party in a park, right? And one of those guys appears tattooed, pierced, sweaty, and sneering the way he would in a mosh pit. He'd be like, we should call the cops. Right?
Yeah, definitely do that.
Or you could just invite them to hang out. Maybe he's just hungry.
Maybe he just came back from that metal concert and
Correct.
he's,
Yeah.
tired.
He's just tired and sweaty.
Yeah. Maybe Baphomet just wants a friend.
It's possible.
Come on, Baphomet. We'll fix you a plate.
Yep. Maybe some of the problems could be solved if people had just been more hospitable. I'm funny.
You know what? Truer words have never been spoken.
That's it.
For real. If there was like just an inkling more civility and just like warmth, many less of the world's problems would exist.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
That is very true. Just take time to breathe and
That's it.
Be nice.
Just be nice.
Yeah.
Just be nice to people. That's it.
Exactly.
Anyway, before we wrap things up, do you want to maybe just talk to everyone a little bit about Infernal Tramps, sort of, I guess, give everybody a little bit more of an overview of kind of what it is and where they can find it, especially?
Sure. Infernal Tramps, it's a short story collection. The stories range in length from flash fiction to novelettes. The shortest one is, I think, under 1,000 words. And the longest one's probably closer to 9,000 words. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of, I don't make a claim I can't back up. They are very weird. There is a sentient button plant in there. There is a pest deterrent system that regenerates the maintenancing company's employees' body parts. There is a literal hellhound. Yeah, I mean, there is a woman who stores her mutant babies in a pickup truck while she tracks down the abandoner from her same tribe, who she can also sense his senses from however many miles away. I mean, there is, if you want, God, I've said this so many times, and but I'll say it again. If you are seeking the experience of David Cronenberg and Clive Barker smoking bath salts together and then writing short stories, I have that experience for you.
Nice. That is a great pitch. I'm sold.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you should just continue to pitch it as such forever.
Yeah. Be undercover.
Yeah. Actually, yeah.
Some hosts make it easier. Some are too much like me, and it's like you get that sort of like sports fan dogs looking in a mirror sense,
Oh boy.
And you can find the book on Amazon. All you have to do is search for Infernal Tramps by Alex Grass. I'll say it the same way my old man used to say it, GRASS, like the green grass. Or you can go to the book site, infernaltramps.com. And there's, some neat stuff on there, and basically everything I thought worth assembling as a minor monument to my ego.
Nice. It has a great cover that you've sent us, which is, it looks like it catches your eye.
It does. It does. It has great cover art.
That's an old vaudeville. That's an old vaudeville poster.
Wow.
Like warped. A warped vaudeville poster. Yeah. Give it 100 years and everything becomes freaky as hell. You know?
That's it. Yes.
The more time goes by, the scarier everything gets.
Oh, yeah.
So.
For sure.
Very
Just
true.
if you just look at an old picture of like a jazz era flapper dancer, like they're just like, they look like, wow, this is like someone made this so they could put it in the background of the scenery in The Shining. You know,
Yeah.
Mhm.
it's scary.
What would be so? Because you said it is short stories that don't necessarily tie into each other. Where should someone start? Which one should they read first?
Oh, okay. Are you talking like don't go in order necessarily?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I like
that's-
doing that. I like to open a book and be like, okay, they're all not related. I'm going to start in the middle,
In the
or at the
middle,
end,
okay.
or at the beginning. You know.
Probably with a woman of distinction.
All right.
Just like short and punchy and kind of funny.
And it gets you into
To
it.
get you into
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
vibe of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Leave some of the slightly weirder stuff for later.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, I guess that one's less weird. It's dark, but it's not. It's one of the less weirder ones. If you wanted to start off weird, well, if you wanted to start off dark, start with In a New World, Its Basement. And if you wanted to start off weird, I highly recommend the EP Implant.
Nice.
All right. Perfect. There you go. 3 starting points.
three
Love
starts.
that.
Yeah.
You guys can pick that up. As of that's it. They were recording this tomorrow, July 15th.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you very much for hopping on with us. This
Thank
was
you so
a
much.
really fun, very cool conversation. And
Yeah.
everybody can obviously make sure to, take a look out for Infernal Tramps and, pick it up if you're looking for short, punchy horror stories. I think it's a really cool place to start.
I agree.
100%. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on.